Hello, sorry for the mishap here. We will continue. We were looking at how different parts of the brain takes care of different parts of understanding verbs. We're speaking about foot sentences, hand sentences, and mouth sentences. We're talking about the illustration of page 91. As you can see, the lower areas in the motor strip that control mouth actions were selectively active when people were understanding language about mouth actions, while areas a little higher up that control hand actions were active when people were listening to sentences about hand actions. And the part of the motor strip that was most active during foot action sentences was right up at the top, where foot action is controlled. Let's get back to the issue we started with at the beginning of the chapter. Humans, uniquely in the known universe, can take a few characters on a page or sequences of sound waves and convert them into a mental representation of actions as complex as arm wrestling techniques. We've now seen some of the mounting evidence that during this process, people automatically mentally simulate loads of motor details of the described actions, including the direction that they would move in, how they would rotate their hands, what body part or parts they would use, and how their hands would be shaped. And that doing so engages the same brain systems as performing real actions. The motor systems of the brain appear to be working over time. What's more, to come back to an issue we discussed in the last chapter, the fact that people perform motor simulation while understanding language is yet another piece of evidence that people are creating scenes in their minds from the perspective of an immersed experiencer. Motor simulation is intrinsically about projecting oneself into a body, often someone else's, and when you simulate what it would be like to do things someone is described as doing, you're taking their perspective, not merely in a visual way, but in terms of what it would be like to control their actions. Understanding language in multimodal ways is a lot like being there. Chapter 5. More than words. There's a dilemma in cognitive neuroscience known as the binding problem. Suppose you're playing Pac-Man. You're doing your best to eat the dots and the bonus fruit, while avoiding Pinky and Blinky and the rest of the bad guys. When you look at the screen, you can see your Pac-Man avatar moving, cruising around, moving upward, then to the left and off the screen, only to reappear on the far right, and so on. At the very same time, you see its color and characteristic Pac-Man shape. Shape, color, location and motion, all the same at the very same time. And likewise, you see the bad guys, Inky and Clyde and company, going their own ways with their own shapes and colors. And each of these percepts, whether of Pac-Man or Inky, is coherent. And by coherent, I mean that even though you see both Pac-Man and Inky at the same time, you know that it's the yellow Pac-Man that's moving upward while the blue Pinky is moving downward. The binding problem is the question of how your brain manages to mechanically put that information together in the right way. We know that the way your visual system works is to separate out different properties of the objects you see into discrete streams. The location and movement of the objects are processed in the where pathway, running from the occipital lobe through the parietal cortex, while the object's shape and color is processed in the what pathway. How are these distinct processes in different collections of neurons hooked back up together in the right way? In other words, if you activate distinct representations of the color, shape, location and movement of several objects at the same time, how are you able to bind together Pac-Man? Pac-Man's yellowness, shape, location and movement, while at the same time binding none of these with Inky's blueness, ghost-like shape, location or direction, which all need to be bound together themselves. I bring up the binding problem not to offer a solution to it here, but because it serves as a useful analogy for something that comes up in language, which has its own version of the binding problem. Suppose instead of playing Pac-Man yourself, you're listening to someone narrate their ongoing Pac-Man game, and you hear them say, "That blue ghost is about to catch my Pac-Man." Each of the words uttered makes its own contribution to what you will eventually mentally simulate. Blue, ghost, catch. and Pac-Man evoke colors, shapes and actions that you can load up into your simulation. But how do you know how to fit them together? How do you know that the ghost is blue and not Pac-Man? Admittedly, if you know a lot about Pac-Man to begin with, then you already know that Pac-Man is yellow, but you can still track which object is what color and moving, where even if you're a Pac-Man novice. How do you know that Pac-Man is about to be caught by the ghost and not the reverse? So the linguistic binding problem is this: how do you assemble the contributions that various words make to simulation so that the right parts go together in the right way?